We talk of a beginning. We talk of a beginning. A beginning. We talk of a beginning. Beginning. But there is no beginning. There is no beginning, but the beginning of our own. There is no beginning, but the beginning of our own. All that has a beginning. All that has a beginning will have an ending. And all that is God is without end.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining ÄPEX Contemporary Performance on this, our 5th anniversary week. My name is Garrett Schumann, and I'm the President and Executive Director of ÄPEX Contemporary Performance. And I'm joined today by Anthony R. Green, whose music you just heard. Anthony is a pianist, composer, and social justice artist who serves as the Associate Artistic Director of the Boston-based concert presenting organization Castle of Our Skins. Anthony was scheduled to be a guest artist with ÄPEX in March, which of course did not happen, but he has worked with me and participated in the advisory board for the ÄPEX Anthology project since 2019. So he's been part of the ÄPEX extended family for a few years already. And I just wanted to further shout out Castle of Our Skins by showing everyone the t-shirt I'm wearing. It's a portrait of the wonderful composer Julius Eastman, and this was a fundraising item for you all earlier in the summer. So Anthony, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your music with us.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So we'll get started by talking about the piece, the performance that we just heard. Like I said, that movement of your song cycle, All That Is Good, was originally going to appear with the other two movements in the world premiere with ÄPEX last March, featuring soprano Jenny Cresswell, but that had to be canceled, of course, because of the pandemic. So how did this video performance come about? How did you get your piece played under these challenging circumstances of 2020?
So I was contacted by a pianist named Q Butler, who works with the World Piano Teachers Association, and she works with the Missouri chapter. And she put together a series of concerts that focus on the music of Black composers. She gathered pianist friends that she knew of throughout the United States, as well as engaged with me and reprogrammed some piano performances that I did for Castle of Our Skins in the past. And she also contacted some of her vocalist friends, one of whom was really interested in performing this particular movement from All That Is Good. So she ended up singing this piece in her house alone underneath my piano recording, and I spliced the audio together. And because I never told her the orientation of the video, she ended up using the cell phone orientation that's a portrait instead of landscape, which was great actually, because then I could superimpose Sojourner Truth's image on the right hand side of the screen. And I think that made for a really nice juxtaposition. So I'm really glad that she ended up doing that.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, our plan for the performance in Michigan was to have a projector so we could project the images of Sojourner Truth and then the two other authors. I'll just jump to that. So the text for this movement, like we said, comes from Sojourner Truth's her New Year's Day greeting from 1880. And you found text by two other writers for the other two movements, Phyllis Wheatley and Harriet Jacobs, for the first and second movements, respectively. So what was the process of finding these texts and putting them together in this way?
So since 2013, which was when Ashley Gordon and myself co-founded Castle of Our Skins, I've been heavily involved not only with Black music research, but also with research into Black history in general, Black writers, Black visual artists, Black architects. And it's been really wonderful coming across so many different pieces of art by just wonderful people who don't necessarily get their fair representation in history. Phyllis Wheatley is a poet that I have known about for quite a long time. Sojourner Truth, of course, is an abolitionist that I've been aware of for quite some time as well. Harriet Jacobs was also an activist, and I had read her narrative, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, which she wrote under the name Linda Brent, when I was a freshman at Boston University, and I took a class called Introduction to African American Literature. So all three of these people I had heard of, and when I had the opportunity to write this song cycle, I just thought that these three wonderful people would be great people to engage with in terms of getting text from their letters, which is something that composers don't necessarily do all the time. They don't necessarily look for letters as inspiration for text, especially to set for songs. So I thought that this was something that I just wanted to do and get this aspect of these wonderful women's creativity and personality out in musical form.
I think something that's really cool about the texts in this song cycle is how you extracted them from larger pieces of writing, and so it's almost, to me, it's almost like you were in conversation with them, with the authors across centuries of history, and there's a really nice touch to that. You're absolutely right. Composers do not often work with like non-poetic texts. That's not really how we're taught to do it, and so that's really cool. And then sort of creating your own story or selections from those larger pieces is a really cool touch. Going back to what we just heard, something that's very striking about it is how it opens with a vocalist whispering. And I'm curious what the exploration of different vocal timbres meant to you for this movement, but also since we didn't hear the rest of the piece, is that a through line where you use different kinds of vocal performance throughout the piece?
So there is no whispering in any of the other movements,
Mhm.
but with this particular movement, so the line is all that is good is without end, and the the whispering doesn't start from the beginning of the line, and the whispering doesn't end with the end of the line either. And I just think this idea of everything that's good doesn't have an end, it should be something that should be an inner voice within all of us. So there was this symbolism that I wanted to portray with the whispering of this line, and that's why it begins with whispering.
It's a very beautiful touch and a wonderfully striking way to start the movement. Um,
Thank you.
I can only imagine it would be even more striking in the context of the whole piece. So,
I think
um,
so too.
well, hopefully Apex's audience will hear that sometime in the future. Before we go, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Castle of Our Skins, which is a really wonderful organization, and we'll link to your website in the description of this on our YouTube page. Much like Apex, your normal operations were disrupted because of the pandemic, and um, a lot of different events, more events than just the pandemic in 2020. And so I'm curious if you can just tell our audience a little bit about what you've done to adapt, and also the really cool projects, online projects that you've been doing this whole year.
Definitely. So when we found out that our spring programming just could not continue, we had a dip, as we all did, as was natural to do. But in our usual way, Ashley and I are both people that like to keep on going no matter what is trying to say stop. So I immediately thought, hey, I've been practicing all of these pieces for this non existent piano recital that I was supposed to give in Michigan. So why don't I just record those pieces for Castle of Our Skins? And that's how the idea of an Instagram live concert came about. I think I may have added one or two pieces to the original set that I was going to perform with Apex, and did some research so I could introduce the pieces with a little bit of historical background on the composers and the piece. And that was really, really fun to do. That concert is online. And I saw all of these composers writing miniatures, and I was asked to write some miniatures for my friends as well. And of course, as things go, most of the people that I saw composing miniatures were white. So I just said to myself, why doesn't Castle of Our Skins make a Black composer miniature challenge? And I kind of wanted to do this very small thing, but it ended up turning into rather a substantial project where we had 18 composers, including Jonathan Bailey Holland and Adolphus Hailstork, which we did not expect at all. But they wrote miniatures for both Ashley and myself to perform and interpret. So we ended up premiering one miniature per week, which took us from May to early September. And that ended up drawing quite a bit of attention that we did not expect, but in such a positive way. We had a young child, I think he was 8 years old, submit a miniature, which was just fantastic. We had miniatures from non-binary people, from queer people, from cis people, from wonderful people, just wonderful, wonderful Black composers, all sharing their experiences, their cultural backgrounds, and their creativity with Castle of Our Skins. and we in turn shared that creativity with the world. We also did children's storytelling hours. We did some poetry reading sessions where people were encouraged to get their wine out and listen to some wonderful poems recited by the poets. We had some professional discussions with mostly Black women who have created their own organizations. And then just this month last month in November, we had our first fully produced digital production called Black Love. And there we premiered a piece by our new Shirley Grant Du Bois, our creative in residence, Tanya Radzwa Tawengwa. And we also matched a sound bathing session from a wonderful South African composer named Muntati Masebe with some dance. And we had spoken word by Umaleni Malabo Adebo. And we had wonderful music, string quartets by Jesse Montgomery. And I am completely forgetting the other ones, Dorothy Rudmore, and wow, I'm so sorry, but wonderful, wonderful string quartets. Unfortunately, because of sync licensing, we couldn't keep that program on YouTube. But it was a wonderful event, and in the future, some of those performances will be rebroadcast. So check out www.castleskins.org, sign up for our newsletter, and you will get the news for when some of these pieces will be rebroadcast.
I have to say, I think I've been so impressed with what you all have been doing both this year and adapting to virtual contexts. But in general, I will say, I think Castle of Our Skins is one of the most important arts organizations in the country. You do such amazing work, and I really look up to what you do as someone who also leads an organization. But it's just everything that I've seen you all tweet about and post and share on your website has been so impressive and wonderfully thoughtfully designed, and featuring amazing composers and artists who, in different disciplines, who I otherwise wouldn't know about or really be able to access. So it's just so special, and it's so great to have a connection to you and be able to work with you too, knowing that you're also doing this amazing work with Castle of Our Skins. So we will, for the people, our audience watching this, there are links to Castle of Our Skins website in the description of this on YouTube, and we'll be tweeting out links to, because you all are one of our favorite organizations to admire and celebrate your innovation and good work and all of that. And so as we come to a close, the final question is, I think something that's on a lot of people's minds is hopefully we're turning a corner with, at least we know 2020 is going to be ending soon. Hopefully we'll be able to get back to more familiar artistic activities soon. And so what are you looking forward to the most artistically in 2021?
So there are a couple of things that I cannot say because they're a little bit unofficial right now. But I will say that one of the things that I'm looking forward to the most is working with a really wonderful, very virtuosic pianist named Jason Hardink, who commissioned me to write a massive 45-minute piano sonata. He is engaged in a project that's celebrating the 100th anniversary of Ives's Concord Sonata, and he wants composers to write response pieces to the Concord Sonata.
Wow.
And so my piece will use James Baldwin as a foundation for material, both philosophical and musical material, because there are some pieces of music that Baldwin references in some of his novels, especially in Go Down Moses. So I'm really looking forward to digging into that piece. It's going to take a lot out of me because I also want to do the Ives thing and write a massive set of essays. But yeah, that's one thing in 2020 that 2021 that I'm really looking forward to.
Well, that sounds incredible, and compositionally and authorally a really big challenge, but I can't imagine it won't be great once it's done. So I will look forward to that. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me and sharing this movement from this wonderful song cycle that hopefully will appear as it was supposed to on an Apex program not too far in the future. And I hope that you have a great rest of your 2020, the few days that we have left. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and same to you. Best wishes for the rest of this crazy year.
Absolutely.